Hi, it's Gavin again from Lucid Computer Solutions. Hope you're well. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about cybersecurity. Now this is a really big topic. There's lots of kind of elements and aspects to cybersecurity, but what I wanted to focus on was just some super simple tips that literally anybody can put in place. And these things will go a really, really long way in keeping you and your systems protected online and when you're working day to day. If you do these few things well, you really do stand a good chance of remaining safe online. So I'll more than likely do a mini series around cybersecurity, with this being the very first one, I think, because like I said, there is a lot to it, and I'm only going to touch on 2 or 3 things today, and there's many other things, but these basic things are super important. So let's start with the very first one, and that is not using an administrator account on your computer. So what does that mean, and what do I mean by that? So when you're using your computer, you can use fundamentally 2 different types of user accounts, really. You can use an administrator account, which gives you access to all of the computer and the system which runs on your computer. So you can do anything you like, install anything you like, access anything you like, which from one perspective sounds great, doesn't it? I've got full control and I can do anything I like. We'll come back to that in a second, because that's not actually a great thing. And then the second type of user account would be a restricted account of some kind, where you don't have full control and you don't have full access and you can't install things or can't install things easily. So the reason you don't want to use an administrator account is because lots and lots of the nasty computer viruses and malware and ransomware and all those harmful things, all them nasty things out there, a lot of them require administrator access to run in the first place. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've clicked on a link in an email, which you should never do, but you've downloaded something to your computer and you've clicked on run. If you're an administrator, that dodgy program will run. But if you're not an administrator, there's a high probability when you clicked on it to run it, which you should never do, by the way, but when you did click on it to run it, at that point, it won't run, because the computer will say to you, you're not an administrator, therefore you're not allowed to run this program. And that in itself keeps you massively protected and safe and secure. So that's something that, you really, really should do. Just using a non-administrator account will go so far in helping, stay protected online. So do ensure that the type of user account you're using on your computer isn't an administrator account. Now, lots of people out there might think that's going to cause me hassle, it's going to be a headache. And I'll be honest, I thought that at first as well. When, we shifted away from using admin accounts a long time ago, I thought it's going to be a constant headache. It turns out it isn't really, because you'll be surprised the amount of times you do actually need administrator access is very, very low. Once your computer's set up and running and you're doing what you need to do on a day-to-day basis, turns out you rarely need administrator access. So it's less painful than you actually might think. So do put that in place. Make sure you're not using an administrator account, because you will stop anything bad in terms of software running on your computer, more than likely. I'm not saying it's 100% guarantee, just to be clear, but it will go a really long way. So next up is making sure your computer systems are kept up to date with security updates, often referred to as security patches, Windows updates, software updates, firmware updates. So basically, in very general terms, you've probably might have come across, Windows updates is the most common one if you're using a Windows computer, where from time to time it will tell you, I've got some Windows updates here, would you like me to install them now? The answer is yes. Your computer should be checking and installing updates on a regular basis. And what do I mean by that? I think realistically, weekly is a good thing to go for. That's a good benchmark. Once a week, your computer should be set up to check for operating system updates. That could be for Windows or for Mac or for Android or for anything like that. And make sure you're downloading and installing them, because most of them are security fixes. And what do I mean by that? So unfortunately, the software you use on any computer or device isn't perfect. And sometimes people will find a little kind of hole in it where they could potentially exploit something. The good news is the people who produce the software, the likes of Microsoft and Apple and Google, when they become aware of these things, they roll out what's called a patch to stop that ever happening. But you need to download it and install it on your computer to remain protected. So yeah, make sure Windows updates are on, you're checking for Mac OS updates regularly, and also within the software you use itself. For example, if you're using Adobe or you're using Microsoft Office, make sure you're checking for updates for them applications as well, because you want to keep them pieces of software up to date and secure as well. So it's not just the operating system, it's your actual software as well. And the final piece when it comes to updates is something called firmware, which you may not be so familiar with. So firmware is software that's used to run the actual hardware in your computer. And again, sometimes, unfortunately, people come across loopholes and can potentially exploit firmware which is out of date on a computer, potentially take control of the computer. I'm not trying to scaremonger, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that could happen. So again, you keep the firmware up to date as well. Firmware updates are a little bit more tricky because it normally means potentially taking your computer offline for a short period of time to apply it, because it normally needs to completely reboot, be completely offline to finish installing some of the firmware updates sometimes. So do check that out. But again, it's worth the very short term kind of disruption, let's say, for, let's say, argument's sake, 10-15 minutes potentially, to keep your computer systems up to date. So you should be doing this on all computers, all laptops, mobile phones, servers, routers. All of these devices need periodically checking, ideally weekly, for updates, and you need to apply the latest versions of them updates. Again, similar to what I was saying before, this will go a massively long way in keeping you secure online. And then the final easy tip, super simple tip, and you more than likely already guessed this, is using a good piece of cybersecurity software which will protect you against computer viruses, malware, ransomware. So there's lots of different manufacturers out there, and I'm not going to get really into that because there's all different opinions about, which one's the better one, what one do you prefer. All I will simply say is, in very general advice, first of all, the free stuff isn't that good. So if you're using a free antivirus, it does a basic job and it's certainly better than nothing. But the two things to say is the paid for ones are a lot better. But the second thing is, if you're in business and you're using a free one, that's probably illegal, because most of the free ones aren't for commercial use. So you need a paid for product in business. So yeah, go for a well-proven, a well-rounded product which doesn't hog your system, which doesn't make it run slow, from a reputable supplier, vendor, whatever you want to call them, and use that to protect your computer from viruses, from malware, to keep you safe online when you're accessing web pages and websites. It should be scanning them and checking them, making sure they're legitimate websites and staying you off the bad ones. And it should be doing regular scans of your computer for anything dodgy as well, so it can clean up and remove anything potentially harmful to you. So to recap here, the 3 bits of super simple advice are: use a non-administrator account, make sure you're making use of updates, and use some decent antivirus, anti-malware, anti-ransomware software as well. A good cybersecurity suite, basically. And the final thing I just want to add to all that is use common sense. This isn't a technical thing. There isn't a process behind this, but use common sense. If you receive an email from somebody you've never dealt with and they're asking you to download an attachment or click on a link, do not do it. Just don't do it. Delete the email. Don't interact with it. don't do it. The worst thing that would ever happen is if it was legit, somebody probably give you a call and say, why didn't you respond to my email? At which point you go, oh, I'm ever so sorry. I wasn't sure if it was, the real deal. So would you mind sending me again now? That's the worst thing that'll ever happen. If in doubt, delete it. Only interact with the stuff you completely trust. Likewise, if you're on a website and you get a strange pop-up message asking you to download something or telling you you need this on your computer, do not trust it. Do not click on it. Just close the web browsers, get some advice. Don't interact with things. The more you click on things, download things, run things, the higher the probability of something bad happening. But if you don't do that, if you question everything, if you almost don't trust anything, which sounds terrible, but unfortunately this is the cybersecurity world we live in. If your default position is not to trust it, that's actually a good mentality when it comes to protection and cybersecurity and computer systems. So do use common sense. Take a step back, have 10 minutes to think about it, come back to it. Don't just steam in there clicking on things. So there we go. That is a super simple cybersecurity bit of advice, which I think anybody can put in place easily. Directly yourselves or with just a little bit of help. I'm sure you can put these things in place. Like I said, this will probably form a small cybersecurity mini-series, so do look out for follow-up videos. And if you've enjoyed this video or find it useful, do really help me out and smash that like button for me. It's really helpful in growing our channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please also subscribe. It massively helps grow our channel, so please do that. And down below are all the links to connecting with me on other channels such as Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. So please do check them out as well. So that's been me, Gavin, from Lucid Computer Solutions. I'll see you on the next video.